we'll be live in a minute or so. Maybe 30
Thank you, Gabe.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for
Thank
being
you.
Thanks, Gabe. Gabe, let me know when you want me to start sharing screen.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the final day of the Maine Philanthropy Partners Conference. I'm really excited to be here this morning. My name is Gabe Perkins, Executive Director of an organization called Inland Woods and Trails. We're based in Bethel, Maine, and I've been serving as a planning committee member of the Philanthropy Partners Conference for about 20 months now, and it's really exciting to be here and to have this all come together. And I'm delighted by this morning's panel. Everybody's coming in from beautiful Bangor, Maine. I love it so much. It's so good. This is a session entitled from the Eastern Maine Development Corporation, Promoting Opportunities for Immigrant Business Owners and Employees Through Local Public-Private Partnerships. I transposed those, public-private partnerships, sorry. And if you have questions that you want to ask of our panelists during the session, do so by clicking on the Q&A right-hand side of the screen and enter your question in there. And then the panelists will answer those at the end. And then in the general chat for helping the people, navigate technology challenges or just to say good job, use the general chat function for that. And I don't know, without much else on my end, that's what I've got. I'll say good job at the end and we'll wrap up. And we've got about 75 minutes. So take it away.
Thank you, Gabe. So are you going to share our PowerPoint? There we go. There it is. Good morning, everyone. We are so pleased to be able to bring our panel conversation to you this morning and give you some ideas and some tips on how we help the immigrant and BIPOC business owners and also job seekers to access services to support growth and sustainability. Next slide. When I moved here many years ago, well, I consider it many years ago, Mainers probably don't, but the percentage of Caucasian in our population in this region was over 97%, just under 98% Caucasian. Now, 21 years later, it's just under 95%, which doesn't seem like a significant change. For our region, it is, but it sent a big message that there are people moving into our region that are going to need to access economic development and business development services, and we need to be able to communicate with them and share those resources and make those totally accessible. You'll hear about some overarching themes throughout our panel, and they include communication, which I'm sure you've heard before over the last couple of days, but it's also respect and cultural sensitivity, it's follow through, and it's accessibility. So the speakers today include myself. I'm Vicki. I'm a past president of the Maine Multicultural Center, and I'm currently with the Eastern Maine Development Corporation as the Director of Community and Business Services. Pam is also a past president of the Maine Multicultural Center and is a long-term educator in this region. Chris Linder is with Mainstream Finance as their CEO. He is another board member for MMCC. And Marwa is the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Northern Light Hospital. And so what you're going to hear is sort of a weaving of how business development, jobs, and how that weaves in with your overall well-being. And it's not only acceptance and providing accessibility to the business owners and job seekers who are from the minority populations and immigrants, but it's also a response to how other business owners work and collaborate with those businesses in our greater community. Next slide. Corporation is an economic development district here in Bangor. We have offices throughout the state and have been a 501c3 nonprofit since 1967. We pride ourselves in being nimble, integrated, and providing long-term assistance. So that means it's not just go in and fix a problem and then walk away. It's there for the long term. If you have other problems, we're here to help you. We check in, we follow through and see if there's other things going on that we can help with. So some of the stuff that we have and services that we have at EMDC include obviously business development, community development, workforce development, which makes us a little unique from other economic development districts in the state of Maine by having that direct integration of workforce and business. We do regional economic development, always looking at it with an eye of how do we get all of those supply chain businesses tied in with new regional projects that could deliver a large number of jobs. It could attract new businesses to the region, and how can my business feed into that new industry or that new organization in the region. We also help with business growth strategies. So if you have a small business that you think you're now poised and ready to expand, either by increasing your market or adding staff, we're there to provide step-by-step guidance on the process to do that without putting too much strain on your business, all leading to sustainability. We also have a very robust lending and investment strategies department. Over the last 8 to 10 months, we've been actively involved with the State of Maine Department of Economic and Community Development in putting out small business grants to those that were directly impacted by COVID. And so in our region alone, we served about 700 businesses. Close to $50 million was put out over the course of about 3.5 months. We were a little busy during the Christmas and the holiday season and early into 2021. But we also have other lending programs that could consist of small loans of $5,000, $10,000, but it can also go up to $100,000 and more depending on the project. We really look at climate resiliency, and I think it's important for our immigrant and BIPOC business owners and workers to understand how the state and our region could be negatively impacted by climate change. Even though Bangor is not right on the ocean coastline, we are fed in by Penobscot River, which comes directly from the ocean, which could have impacts on rising shorelines and other kinds of negative impacts. And so we want to make sure that there's enough planning in advance so that when these impacts happen, they're minimized. We also provide technical assistance for government contracting. And finally, and that's including helping small business owners that may have a product that could be of interest or need by the federal government and how to go through that process. And then finally, one of our programs that I think that is most applicable to this audience is our Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program, or DBE. And that's funded through the Maine Department of Transportation, but it works with women, the disabled, immigrants, persons of colors, anyone who's considered disadvantaged, to help them navigate the system and be able to work with the state government and grow their business. Next slide. So something else that Eastern Maine Development Corporation did over the past few years is offer space to the Maine Multicultural Center to have their offices in our downtown Bangor headquarters office, right in across from City Hall. This was done with a lot of thoughtful consideration because we felt if we had that presence here within our offices, we would have direct access to work with the immigrant and the BIPOC populations and make sure that we can access services and support from our community partners. And we would be more likely to hear about it when the office is based right here. And EMDC has really embraced that whole concept of equity in hiring. We have employees on our staff now that are from Rwanda and Mexico and India. And so we've got that sensitivity as well that we can call on as the case may be. But again, we're all about building reciprocal relationships. We want to work together. We want to pull up the chairs to the table and be there for the long term. And we want to make sure that all of the services that are available are informed. We inform the immigrant and BIPOC community so that they know those services are there and help them walk through the steps in the process. And at the same time, let them know about other services that are in our community. And that connection with Maine Multicultural Center has really enhanced that. And I think a good example is we recently have been increasing our presence with newsletters and social media. And so when we put out announcements about upcoming events or upcoming opportunities or new information, for example, we just published a business resource guide, a resource guide for reopening after being the downtime with COVID-19, and also a business needs assessment. But we've been able to share that with the Maine Multicultural Center, who sends it out to a very broad targeted audience to make sure that everybody is hearing about some of the opportunities and the services that they can access. Next slide. So as we work with business owners and job seekers, our primary philosophy, and this is a term that's been around for years, is there's no wrong door. If you call me and you're looking to get help for a job, I'll direct you to the appropriate person and put them in connection. So you can call anyone within our offices and be able to reach the services that you need. We try to provide culturally sensitive technical assistance. And by having, again, the Multicultural Center embedded within EMDC, that allows us direct access, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to be able to properly communicate with those other populations. We provide one-on-one counseling to access services. So again, going back to the early in the presentation, it's not just one shot, we're here, fix the problem, we're gone. It's we're there for the long haul, so that as other questions come up, we can continue to help. We can identify business and employment needs. And I said earlier how this not only impacts the minority-owned businesses, but it also impacts other established businesses who may be seeking partnerships with small businesses to build their product or to build their markets or to access job seekers. And so we want to make sure that those connections are made and that the established businesses have that cultural sensitivity training so that they know the appropriate way to work with and communicate, and just to share that those businesses are out there in our community and they should be accessed. And then we have mentoring opportunities, and that's mostly through the Maine Multicultural Center and connecting a business with another like business or similar business who is from that minority population that can help guide them through. Next slide. I think that's all I have right now. So I'm going to flip this over to Pam Procurry. Pam, you're muted.
Hi, my name is Pam Procurry. I'm a native of Maine, and have been working with the Maine Multicultural Center since its inception. We're a community-driven group. We represent area businesses, cultural and educational organizations. We promote community enrichment and economic growth by attracting, retaining, supporting, and integrating people of diverse cultures and backgrounds into the greater Bangor area. The organization started in 2016. Sean Faircloth was the instigator, I guess you would say, pulled a group of people together in response to a growing need for workforce development in the area. Folks were starting to have a hard time finding employees to fill their job openings. That situation, as predicted, is getting a little bit more dire as time moves on. And the pandemic certainly has helped to accelerate that process. But the idea was that we were looking at the demographics here in Maine and the number of folks that would be retiring from the workforce, looking at the birth rate and the number of young people coming in to replace them, and finding that if every single person born in Maine stayed in Maine and a large number of them that had moved out came back, we would still not have enough people to replace those that were leaving the workforce due to retirement. And so understanding that economic growth and development depends on having a strong workforce, we realized that if we were going to continue to grow here in Maine and to have a strong economy, that we really needed to start looking at immigration of people into the state from other parts of the country and other parts of the world. As Vicki pointed out, we're a very white society, non-diverse. And so we started thinking, how could we make ourselves more attractive to people from away? And thinking that if we were perceived as a welcoming and supportive place, that would certainly go a long ways towards encouraging people to move to the state. And so the Multicultural Center was formed in 2016, and we had a twofold mission. One was to provide professional welcoming services to new Mainers, particularly immigrants who might not be familiar with our culture and certainly with our communities and how to navigate within those communities. And the second was to educate about and celebrate the diversity that already existed in our communities as we went around trying to connect with those groups that were already here. We found out that there was a surprising amount of diversity already in the community. There were groups representing all kinds of cultures that we started becoming connected to. And so we began by forming a steering committee of volunteers that drew up a strategic plan, tried to envision what we'd like to see our community look like, brought a bunch of folks to the table to have this discussion. And then in 2017, we officially incorporated and became a 501c3 organization and moved to a board of directors structure. We have an all-volunteer board, and we are an all-volunteer organization at this point. Last summer, we had a VISTA volunteer that served over the course of the summer, and we're currently in the process of interviewing and hiring a full-time VISTA volunteer for the coming year, which should be a real game changer for us. So the professional and welcoming services to new Mainers, our focus in that area, it has been on two needs. Our hope is eventually to have Bangor, Maine be designated a refugee resettlement center. And so part of the reason for the Maine Multicultural Center coming into being was to help create the infrastructure that would be needed to support refugees in particular, but other immigrants that were moving into the area. A number of things need to be done. We began by making an asset map of the area. What are the services that could be provided to folks moving in? And we found that there's a couple areas where there was some particular need, and one was around housing, which is a real issue here in the greater Bangor area. And the other was around workforce development, training, connecting folks to employment services in the area, as well as the usual connecting them to local schools, to legal services, to medical and dental health services, it just kind of generally helping them to acclimate in the area and to start to understand and know the culture that they had kind of moved into. The second part of our mission was to educate about and celebrate the diversity that already existed here. And so we have done that in a large number of ways. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So just to give you an overall picture of immigration here in Maine, there are almost 50,000. These are 2019 statistics, so these numbers have grown since the first survey was done by the New American Economy. So just under 50,000 immigrants here in the state of Maine. They comprise at that time 3.7% of the population, up from 1 or 2. Immigrant household income for the whole state is $1.6 billion. So there's significant economic impact from immigrants in the state. The taxes they paid in total was $464.4 million. Of that, $151.9 million went to state and local coffers. So a significant input into our economy that way. And then federal income taxes of $312.4 million, again, a significant contribution. Leaving immigrant population in the state with a spending power of $1.28 billion. So the potential to impact the economy here in Maine is huge. Also, a number of them have become entrepreneurs. Shouldn't be dollar signs here. I'll have to talk to the person that put that PowerPoint together, which would be me. But in District 1, there were 1,102 entrepreneurs, immigrant entrepreneurs in the state of Maine in 2019, and 750 of them in District 2. Immigrants start new businesses at a much higher rate than native-born Americans do. So you can see that the potential for positive economic impact is huge. Immigrants bring a lot to our community. They make our community vibrant, not only economically, but adding cultural diversity to the area that just makes it a much more interesting place to live in. Next slide, please. So how do we do what we do? We have a couple committees, active committees at work. Again, all staffed by volunteers, but we do a lot of work. The Education Committee is extremely active and has done a number of things, running some workshops for area teachers on how to teach effectively in a multicultural classroom. We've done several of those workshops that provide CEUs for teachers that are looking for recertification. It's been quite popular. As a kind of spin-off from that, we have an educators book club that we've been running that runs for in the fall and spring and summer. We looked at a number of texts so far. We looked at White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, and we're currently reading We Want to Do More Than Succeed by Bettina Love. Typically, we have 20 to 30 educators who participate and earn CEUs from that as well. And then the Education Committee also runs monthly multicultural community forums with some support from the Maine Humanities Council. And those forums are folks from a variety of nonprofit, mainly organizations in the state who and also immigrants who talk about their experiences moving here in the state to the state of Maine, and talking about the kinds of services that are provided, and talking about the different cultures that we have in the state. So we have a Facebook page where all of those events are listed, and you can access and learn about new ones coming up. Our events committee is on pause. We used to run an event called Breaking Bread with Our Neighbors, which was a large potluck that featured a particular culture or group of folks in the area. So we'd have a little presentation in addition to just delicious food from many, many cultures. We've had to shut that down due to the pandemic. And so we've put our energy into our multicultural forum. We hope once things open up again to get back to doing that. It was a very popular event that allowed us to meet our immigrant neighbors and allowed our immigrant neighbors to meet, regular citizens, long-standing citizens of Maine, and to learn about each other. Next slide, please. Some more of what we do is outreach to the business community. 2 years ago, we held a conference where we invited business folks, including many immigrant entrepreneurs, to come and to discuss immigration and its impact on the business community. We had some folks from the legal community talk about the details of how you would go about hiring immigrant workers, and we're here to help connect businesses to the services that would allow them to be successful in hiring and retaining immigrant workers. We have a number of strategic partnerships, particularly working with Main Street Finance, welcoming immigrant neighbors here in Bangor, the Muslim Center of Maine. We work with the university, the Multicultural Center up at the University of Maine. We've recently worked with the City of Bangor's health department. We're part of a group of folks that had a conversation about the challenges and possible strategies for dealing with those challenges of getting immigrants vaccinated for COVID. We're pulling together a group at this point to look at housing issues in the area. And finally, we do advocacy work. A number of legislative pieces have come before the Maine legislature that impact immigrants in the area. And so we provide expert testimony at public hearings around those issues. And we respond to events and that might come up where we feel someone needs to step up and be a voice in support of immigrants in the community. I've listed our website. I invite you to visit that and to visit us on Facebook at Maine Multicultural Center as well. And that's my presentation. So next slide.
Turn my microphone on. Thanks, Pam. Sorry about that. So I'm with Mainstream Finance. We're a community development lender based out of Bangor, but serving the state of Maine, mostly Eastern Maine, and we're part of Panquith's Community Action Agency. And the two main are small business owners and new homeowners, or folks who potential homeowners who want to buy their first home. Often those who can't find financing elsewhere. Just a little, to give a little bit more context to Greater Bangor, we don't have specific statistics just for Bangor, but in our experience and other partners' experience around, in and around Bangor, is new Mainer entrepreneurs are small, but they're definitely growing and thriving. We've seen many do quite well during COVID, some struggling, and we're trying to help them, and others who are opening new businesses, which is really exciting. As Pam mentioned, those from other countries are almost 2 times, if not more, likely to start their own business than Americans who were born here. And even further, about 30% of all startups in the US are from immigrants. Right now, as service providers, both EMDC and us and others, we're seeing a huge uptick in startups right now. Those folks who might have been laid off, those who are deciding to have life changes and would rather work for themselves than someone else. It's pretty amazing across the board how many new businesses are starting right now during COVID. So it's not all sort of struggles. One thing that does happen a good deal is a lot of folks from around the country as well as the world do come to Bangor to work at some of our larger employers like hospitals, Northern Light, the University of Maine, and elsewhere. And often a spouse may find themselves in a situation where they can't find a job that fits their skills. And in some cases, unfortunately, I think Maine is catching up, but their skills are not recognized here. And we know of even a former board member of ours who could not, who had a really hard time getting her legal license here in Maine, even though she was well qualified and probably overqualified. And so many times with those difficulties, they choose to start their own business. And also perhaps after finishing school for themselves, they'd like to stay, or they started a job here and want to break out and sort of hang their shingle, as we often say, after having sort of learned an industry. In terms of serving immigrant entrepreneurs, and I think this is true for EMDC and our other service provider partners here in Greater Bangor, and one thing that I would preface in all that I say here, and I think all of us here say today, is in a lot of ways, we're still learning, and there are a lot of things that we need to do better. And there's a lot of learning that we can have with the populations and service providers in the areas such as Portland and Southern Maine, as well as Lewiston. And so there's still a great deal of work to be done. But one of the key things that I think all of us here today at today's panel, the really important thing is about coordination and communication. You'll also see amongst ourselves within the 4 panelists, but also our board and our various committees, that we don't have one specific lens that we're trying to serve new Mainers. New Mainers have all types of needs, schooling, workforce development, as Vicki mentioned, and different social services. So if I, as Mainstream Finance, just went in and said, we're going to help new Mainers, and sort of ignoring all the other needs, we probably would fail, and the new Mainers themselves would likely sort of feel left out in terms of really meeting their needs. The other important thing is all of us are looking at these efforts and learning and trying things really from a long-term view, and not trying to come up with the best program and the best solution the next couple of months, but really seeing in this as a long-term effort of 5 to 10 years. and really creating those relationships and trust first. And then the programs and services may come later. And sometimes that's a little difficult to stomach. We do some activities, but really it's about establishing those relationships and trust first. Also, just showing up consistently over time, and not necessarily. Sometimes we as nonprofits, we get funding, we swoop in for a year and help someone, and then all of a sudden the funding dries up and we disappear. And that's not just for new Mainers, that can be for a geography or anywhere else. And we really have to be consistent and committed to this, no matter what the funding is doing, no matter whose priorities may change over time, we're committed to that. And also, finally, I think the other important thing is just being okay with not leading. I think a lot of us are just A-types who want to dive in and lead the charge. But for communities of color, new Mainers in particular, a lot of times what we need to do is just sit back and listen and support rather than leading the charge, and in a lot of ways. We as Mainstream work really closely with many resource partners and service providers in Greater Bangor. The ones that I mentioned here are focused on entrepreneurs, businesses. We work very closely with EMDC and their team, from Vicky's team. There is a group of us called the Business Resource Partners of Greater Bangor. You see all the members there, and we meet regularly, especially during COVID. It's been really useful in sort of coordinating our efforts. We do activities together, and just sharing information on, how does a SBA Paycheck Protection Program loan work, and how do we get our entrepreneurs through that program. So it's very useful. And these are what we would call sort of Main Street businesses, your mom and pop businesses. 90% of the folks that we serve at Mainstream are self-employed. And so that's kind of our focus. And you probably recognize some names there: SCORE, SBDC, EMDC from Vicky, but also Four Directions, a Native American nonprofit lender, as well as New Ventures Maine with their office in Bangor. And then also there's a group of called Upstart Maine in Bangor, who really focuses on the high growth type businesses, who might be more technology focused, export focused, and employment focused. These are the job creators. And that group of organizations includes UMaine, the city of Bangor, and other business accelerators. And we all work together in many ways. One annual event that we do is called Bangor Blitz. Used to be in person, now has been virtual twice. And we're planning another one in the fall, I believe. So there are a lot of joint programs going on, and a lot of conversations about how can we better serve entrepreneurs of color, particularly new Mainer entrepreneurs. And there's certainly a lot of work that needs to be done. As I mentioned, there are a lot of discussions are being had. There is a sister organization within Bangor called Welcoming Immigrant Neighbors of Bangor. And we've had a few conversations just around how EMDC or we or others may be able to support some of their immigrant families who are in Bangor, those who may want to have a side job of perhaps catering or selling food in different ways, or setting up a business, setting up a formal business. We're also part of a wider effort, and actually there's 8 communities throughout Maine looking at this, and the city of Bangor initiated this, but the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston has a program called Working Communities Challenge. And for a greater Bangor group, which includes secondary schools, universities, workforce institutions, nonprofits like ourselves, and several cities and towns are all working towards how we can help the workforces of tomorrow and the entrepreneurs of tomorrow really get the skills and support they need to succeed in Greater Bangor. And that includes people of color and new Mainers who are often left out or don't have the paths that some do. We in particular, Mainstream Finance, we're also working with an informal group, but it's formalizing over time, called the Maine Prisoner Reentry Network. Approximately about 20% of the folks in the state's prisons are people of color and are disproportionately so, given that Maine's population is about 5 to 7%. And so we're working closely with them and working with their reentry coaches on how they can coach folks who are leaving prison on finding the services they need, the housing they need, but also managing their own personal finances and perhaps starting a business if they'd like. It's a similar statistic. I think it's something like people who have been through the justice system are 4 times more likely to start their own business than the general population. So I think I'll end there and hand it over to Marwa.
Can everyone hear me? Fine. Yes. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Marwa Hassanen. I am the System Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Northern Light Health. I have 10 member organizations, 10 hospitals around the state of Maine that are under my wing. So it is such important work that I'm honored to be at the helm of with our CEO, Tim Dentry. I've been in this role for about 6 months now, so it's been a whirlwind so far, but it has been wonderful. I'm, again, very excited to be doing this very, very important work. As my colleagues have stated, Maine is a highly homogeneous state. It's about 95% white populated. So we really need to elevate these issues in order to make our state more inclusive and equitable. I have the honor of really working with a lot of our immigrant populations. A lot of our physicians are J-1 visa holders. So they come to Northern Light Health, and it's more diverse inside than it is outside, and our new Mainers as well. So I try to get them acclimated in our state and also get everybody else on board with DEI and what that means and how to be better, colleagues and friends. Research shows us that celebrating diversity and creating organizational principles that are culturally literate and that openly respect and value individuals' various and intersectional racial, ethnic, sexual, and gender differences is far more beneficial than just taking a colorblind approach in which we ignore identity-based differences. We must build empathy and help people have the courage to do this internal work required in order to create lasting change. And that's kind of my position at Northern Light Health. This work is often difficult and it can be uncomfortable. I say that first and foremost when I present to our staff members. It's okay to be uncomfortable, and we actually need to get to the point where we are comfortable with being uncomfortable. And there has to be a purpose and there has to be effort in doing this work. The concept of cultural humility, we used to call it cultural competence before, but now in the DEI realm, we've changed that to say cultural humility. So this concept is truly essential in order to build greater trust amongst colleagues within organizations and to really sustain a culture of belonging and respect for all. To be effective leaders and mentors and colleagues, we must educate ourselves, examine our own internal biases, and really understand how privilege and system level inequities create barriers to different groups, to our immigrant friends and new Mainers of all different backgrounds. It's not just ethnic, it's racial and gender and sexual orientation and so forth. I've been very honored and blessed to be part of the Maine Multicultural Center and on the board. And I love also collaborating, across any different organization for for our town, for Bangor, for our state. Expanding our networks and exploring diverse perspectives and including diverse stakeholders is essential. It's really, really important to pull in different networks and resources. And I've been able to do so with, Northern Light Health and Maine Multicultural Center as well. With Northern Light Health, we have had a lot of actionable steps this past year in order to really walk the walk. We are taking an active role in creating this change that I'm talking about and supporting a culture of care for all and across all levels of organization. We've embarked on full-scale organizational efforts around medical, racial, and social justice, as I mentioned, led by our CEO, Tim Dentry. He's truly been a champion of this work. Some of our efforts have included presentations. I've provided foundational DEI trainings for over 12,000 employees of ours. And the purpose is to truly cultivate a sense of safe community and foster diversity and growth and create a welcoming and affirming environment for providers and patients alike. I lead the DEI Council for Northern Light Health for the entire system. Tim Dentry chairs that, and it was created this year and tasked with reviewing policies and practices to identify ways in which Northern Light Health can support DEI and create that trust that I refer to. Tim Dentry has also done the Tim Talk podcast that have been heard across the country. And we seek to break down barriers, open hearts and minds to diversity, and focus on issues of social and medical justice. We've had over 24 guests this year that who have shared their stories, backgrounds, and expertise on important topics. I actually recorded mine. I'm the last one, and I recorded mine with Tim Dentry on Wednesday, and that should be broadcasted on the 27th. And I talk about my work and my role with Northern Light Health. We've also had system-wide diversity inclusion surveys that basically brought forth responses from over 2,000 employees. We use these and use the national benchmarks to really gauge and measure the actionable steps that we're taking. Other events and updates that we've had recently is our workplace violence and provider discrimination policy. What happens is that a lot of our providers or international nurses have been discriminated against from patients. A patient, for instance, will say, "I don't want Dr. So-and-so because he or she has a thick foreign accent." And in the past, we have accommodated their wants or their desires. Or, "I don't want so-and-so based on their sexual orientation or the color of their skin." So now we are saying that, we're committing to a zero tolerance policy and telling patients that we will not accommodate substituting providers or international nurses or anything based on discrimination. And if someone insists on that, we allow them to seek care elsewhere. And we actually modeled that after a Mass General policy in which a lot of different healthcare systems across the country are doing this now. And it really ensures that our staff and employees and providers all feel welcome here and safe and protected. That goes along hand in hand with our workplace violence. We've rolled out a system-wide training of all of our leaders, and our leaders in turn train all of their staff members. And again, committing to a zero tolerance policy and making this very, we're putting up ads that are patient facing as well. We've recently also had a non-binary transgender presentation. It was such a huge hit. We had over, I think 300 attendees for that. And it corresponds with our trans policy that we're working on, larger systemic changes with clinical informatics to really educate our staff on appropriate workflow. Basically, and I think that's in the next slide, but basically, if we have a transgender patient in the past, the dead name was used, and that was very problematic. Patients would be very, very traumatized if their dead name was used instead of the preferred name, or their preferred gender pronoun was not used. So now we have gone in through Cerner and made sure that those banners are changed. And we're rolling out workshops and trainings for our support staff for better understanding and awareness on how to better care and communicate with our trans patients. I just finished an unconscious bias and microaggressions module. I present those live, but then after the end of that presentation, we put them on HealthStream. 12,500 employees are required to take that training. And now I've started on privilege and allyship, and the same thing will happen with this one as well. What else? One other interesting thing that we just worked on is with our AVP, Tim Doak. He is the AVP of Facility Planning, Design, and Construction, to ensure that our spaces, our Northern Light Health spaces, are DEI supportive, so that we take a look at, even like the parking lots, are they well lit? Are we making sure that there is modesty and privacy for many of our ethnic groups that ask for that? If you can go to the next slide, please. This shows a little bit of the EMR changes that I was referring to. This is how it used to look before the banners that all the physicians and providers and even the registration staff used to see. So for example, if this person named Maria is now Dominic, they would come out in the lobby and ask for Maria, and it was now Dominic, and Dominic would be absolutely traumatized and devastated, and we can't allow that to happen anymore. So now Dominic, the preferred name, is highlighted, and the gender pronoun is now changed from female to male, and that's highlighted. And all of our 12,500 employees are getting training on this. And if you go to the last slide, please. These are our patient and staff experience questions. We work with Press Ganey, again, to measure our DEI goal setting, ensuring that there is patient satisfaction and improving a culture of care from an employee perspective. And these are the questions that we use for our staff members. We ask them, our patients on the left-hand side here, we ask them if the staff members have respected them on these needs: culture, religious beliefs, race, ethnicity, gender identity, and sexual orientation. And on the right side here, our staff members are also asked if how they feel. Are we meeting these needs, based on, again, culture, religious belief, gender identity, sexual orientation. And those are our FY22 DEI metrics that will gauge how well we're doing. And that wraps up my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Just sort of a conclusion of our panel before we go flip into questions, that I think what's coming through is that we've really made a lot of progress over the last 5 to 6 years. And the development of the Maine Multicultural Center sort of triggered that change in making us think and embrace and be cognizant that we're helping and serving people from the new Mainers, the minority, the immigrant business owners and job seekers. And we're looking at it in a holistic fashion. It's just not going in and saying, we're only going to help you with your question about a business, and then you're on your own. You got to find out where you can get help for the other things that you're experiencing. We make sure that we foster those connections through the Maine Multicultural Center and a board that is populated by representatives in the community, through either social services or business and economic and workforce services. We make sure that we communicate with each other so that if we see something that's happening that needs to be addressed, we can work on it collectively and get it out to a broad audience or broad members of the community that we're hoping to serve. We also work on pursuing funding as a group, and have had a little bit of success, but it's helped us to go out and expand access to services and really be there to help people when they have a need. So with that being said, we can open it up to questions. And I see 2 questions here. Gabe, do you want to read those or do you want me to read those?
I'm happy to read them.
Great.
And then you all can decide who wants to answer, or maybe all 4 of you will answer. Does that sound okay?
Yep.
All right. So we'll start with a question from Marvis. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I like this one. It's always about expanding. Will MMC expand into other parts of Maine? Marvis lives in the Blue Hill Peninsula and would love an organization like MMC to exist near where they live. So,
back in 2015, when we first started talking about the concept of Maine Multicultural Center, there was a lot of debate about what should we call ourselves. Should we be the Bangor Multicultural Center? Should we be the Eastern or should we be a Maine Multicultural Center? And we went with Maine because the intent is that as we gain more footing and experience and build on the programs that we've been working on for the past few years, we have a hope that we can extend this beyond our borders to go to other areas of the region, particularly in Eastern Maine. You get out in the rural communities and there really isn't much of anything as far as services directly targeted for the immigrant and the BIPOC community. And so I think that in other, the gender identity folks and things like that. And I know I didn't say that right, I apologize. But anyway, but the plan has been all along that we want to expand our footprint. It's just that we're not ready to do that. We haven't been ready to do that until we've got a better handle on how we're reaching out locally. That being said, we share on social media upcoming events that Pam spoke about and conferences and opportunities, and send it to a large audience beyond this region so that people that are on mailing lists and receive notifications from the Maine Multicultural Center and from EMDC, we have more than 2,000 individuals on our general mailing list. They're going to receive those communications as well. So I think the answer is yes, that's in the plans.
If folks want to get on the mailing list, they can go to our website and our email address is there. Send an email address to us, and we'll be happy to add them to our mailing list.
That's great. You're making Marvis's day. Right. Making a big announcement. Anyone else want to provide context or color for that, or we can move on to the next question?
There was another question from Amy Scott. Did we address that?
No, we'll do that right now. Yeah, this is from Amy Scott. And Amy asks, how can these strategies, programs, and services apply to welcoming BIPOC people from anywhere? Can these be expanded or adapted beyond immigrant populations or inclusive of other populations? She says immigrant populations' needs are certainly specific and they need to be met. How do we expand this out to other parts of Maine?
We've had that conversation at Maine Multicultural Center with our community forum. Do we only bring folks who talk only about immigrants? And we decided that really multiculturalism is a really big umbrella that encompasses many things, and that all of this is linked and interconnected. And while our primary focus is immigrants, that kind of embracing of diversity and appreciation and celebration of diversity is can't just be focused on one group, right? Either you appreciate it or you kind of don't, and it can't be exclusionary, or it really doesn't work. And so while we put mainly our efforts there, we in our philosophy and our thinking, we understand that it encompasses many. I think Marwa can probably speak to this as well.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more, Pam. And that's a great question, Amy. Thank you for that. I completely emphasize, and I actually reiterate in my role, that diversity encompasses all different kinds of people, and it's not just race or different cultures or ethnicities, but we, DEI encompasses and includes all kinds of social identities, and that includes sexual orientation and gender and race and religion, and so all the different social identities is what we call them, and characteristics. Because what ends up happening is that if we just say, and I know Maine Multicultural Center, we emphasize immigrant communities and new Mainers, but within DEI we can't do that. Obviously, we are more inclusive of everyone, because what ends up happening in a highly homogenous state like Maine is that people end up saying, well, that doesn't affect me, or and if it doesn't affect me, then it doesn't matter. So we're saying, no, actually it matters to all of us, because, your social identity is impacted one way or another, whether you're a female or a male, or Caucasian or Black, or, there's so many different power dynamics. And if we understand our privileges and we're able to interrupt the power systems and the systemic racism and so forth. So that's an excellent question. And within, again, DEI, we include everybody, and we want to make sure that we interrupt the biases that we all hold. We're only human, we all have them, in order to help others that are less privileged than ourselves.
We also, you also need to recognize intersectionalities, right? Folks identify in many different ways, right? And so I could be Black and transgendered. I could be, I could be a Muslim and have some other identity. I could be a Muslim and I could be gay. I could be that numbers of things that kind of impact folks. And so if you focus only on one, you don't get a true picture of the entire individual, and you can't sort of understand the experience that person is having and respond appropriately if you're too narrowly focused on one particular group or another. So,
and I would just add just one thing, just like we were saying, how we have to look at meeting needs of different needs, entrepreneurship or finding a job or getting skills. We should be looking at that through inclusivity too. We work with a lot of folks who are disabled. As well as our average age of entrepreneur is actually 40. It's not kids coming out of college. It's, we have to kind of use a lens that's really inclusive of, there's ageism as well, that we really have to encompass it all. And I think the important thing is not to really design something special. It's about inviting and conversations, rather than creating something special for one group or another. And yes, you have to tailor things, like times and where do you meet and all that sort of thing. But the actual delivery of service doesn't necessarily have to be different, and it definitely shouldn't be less than. It should be at least as good as. And I think that's the important part of inclusivity is seeing it through all lenses. And I love a quote about someone who worked on disabled rights in New York. And the analogy she used is, just having the ramps to sidewalks, and how yes, that helps disabled, but think about the delivery people and the mothers and the fathers with pushing baby baskets, and everybody benefited from somebody making improvements because the disabled population asks for it, but all of us benefit from seeing things in a different light.
You know, one thing I wanted to mention, and we kind of alluded to this, but we live in a changing world and a changing business environment and a changing social environment. And when changes come down from the state or for the federal government, or how do you do business, what, you know, taxes, employment rules, I see it as our duty to be able to inform the community and let them know what those changes mean. How do you have to respond to this change? Does it impact you as a business owner or a job seeker? And sometimes I think that's going to require a little bit more consideration to make sure that the message that we're sharing about changes is understood, and that people can adapt that into their world easily without having to, you know, what does this mean? And so that's another one of those roles that I think collectively we can work together. And we work, you know, mostly locally, but as Pam mentioned and Chris mentioned, we have partnerships across the state. And so what's happening, what's being uncovered in southern Maine could have applicability up in our region, in our rural communities. And so we want to make sure there is the sharing of that information as well. So we're not working in this. We don't have tunnel vision. We're not working in this bubble where we're only going to think about Bangor and nobody else, because it's a big world. And so inclusivity includes everybody beyond Bangor's margins. So.
Any other thoughts? I mean, those are the questions that came in. Chris, don't get me started on sidewalks and like telephone poles in the middle of those things, or people parking on them because not everybody can make it through. Who knows who's coming down the road next? That stuff drives me bananas. So we don't have to go there now, but it's all a part of this. So it does come into other sectors as well, like in my nonprofit recreation organization. Like I think about that stuff all the time, and how we can be more inclusive to people just trying to get from point A to point B, however they're getting there, and what's the best way for it. So and this was an amazing panel and learning for me, and really refreshing to hear about the work that you've all sunk into over the years, right, to get to this place, make these acknowledgments, and get to work, because it's worth it, right?
It certainly is.
You know, I say this about a lot of things. I've said this all week. Like, we live in these communities, right? We're going to see these people. We're going to see each other at the grocery store. We might as well try to figure out a way to work together in different ways and help out. So I just want to thank you all for your time and your presentation this morning.
You know, one place that we haven't reached out to, and one partnership that we haven't been looking at recreation, outdoor recreation, and how do disabled people access that? Traditionally, hiking and being out in the woods, how do we bring folks from urban centers, to experience that? And so I think there's opportunities in places that you don't even think about, really.
Oh, you're hitting the third rail, which is a good thing for me. Like we can do this offline all the time. Let's do a little shared experience there. I love it. Another question did come in, actually, and I'm sorry it's coming in late. We've still got 6 minutes, so we're gonna keep you here. And the question's from Jennifer. And are there partnerships or expertise you are needing or looking for your organizations currently? Like, you're offering all this help, but what do you need help with?
Everything.
All right, Jen, everything. All right, we'll see you.
So I don't know, things that come to mind. We're always looking for translators, because that's a really important piece. people with social work kind of backgrounds that know how to connect folks to social services. That's always an important need. People with who are involved somehow in the housing industry in some capacity. That's a huge need that needs to be solved here in the Bangor area. Obviously, people, educators. People in the workforce development area that can help us connect to employment, people with legal backgrounds that can help new Mainers, figure out their legal situation. Other issues that come up, transportation is an issue. I mean, there are so many needs. Chris is leaving. Okay.
I wanted to add mentors
to
yeah. that as well. I think that we can always use that I've experienced this and this is how I handled it kind of advice from someone that you can identify with or relate to or understand, I think is always useful, and having that mentoring advice available as situations arise is a great connection. But I think as far as an organization, we are always open to anyone who's interested in working with us. And so there's a general email that is on our website that you can contact us, or you can contact one of us that's speaking here today to say what you do and that you've got an interest. Yes.
Yeah, so someone with marketing expertise, people with website expertise, kind of technology expertise is certainly an area that we could use some help with on the board. So ourselves personally, if you have that, we'd love to talk with you. Sorry.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, it's we had a session yesterday and we're like, it's okay to ask for help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, it's okay to ask for help in your work because we're all trying to do work here and make the place better. So I posted a survey for the session. Please fill that out as attendees to this excellent session. And again, thank you to Chris. He had to leave early. Sounded like a work emergency, but thank you to Chris and Pam and Marwa and Vicky for your time this morning. We still have some more Philanthropy Partners Conference coming up next, and this will roll right into it. I think in some ways it's like, how has COVID-19 affected your work is our next sort of big roundtable, and you can get into different sets of groups to talk about your experiences with that. And then we've got some other fun stuff coming up later this afternoon. But thank you to the panelists.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all.
It was our pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks. So
have a great day.
yeah, great day.
Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, guys.